Well, U.S. President Donald Trump is about to host Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, to sign a minerals deal. Now, the deal will grant the U.S. access to the embattled nation's rare minerals. Kyiv's hoping it will cement U.S. financial interest in supporting Ukraine's independence. Now, Trump has praised the deal, saying a step to a ceasefire will come next.
We'll be signing a historic agreement that will make the United States a major partner in developing Ukraine's minerals and rare earths and oil and gases, and we have a great understanding. I think it's going to be great for Ukraine. We're going to be at the site. The next step we're making is toward a very achievable ceasefire. We hope that that can happen quickly.
So let's take a closer look at what could come out of this minerals agreement that the two are set to sign at the White House.
Blasting out wealth from the Ukrainian soil. According to Kyiv, there's much more still waiting underground, including rich reserves of critical minerals. On paper, at least, Ukraine is estimated to have 500,000 tons of lithium, or 1/3 of Europe's reserves, 20% of the world's graphite, as well as the largest reserves of titanium in Europe. Lithium and graphite are both essential for electric car batteries. Ukraine's government says it has enough for 20 million vehicles. Titanium, meanwhile, is in high demand in the aerospace and defense industries, with Ukraine's reserves thought to be equivalent to 15 years of global production. Ukraine also has deposits of other rare minerals important for the manufacture of computers and smartphones. This map, based on Ukrainian government data, shows the location of key deposits throughout the country, including rare earth minerals. But experts say things aren't quite as simple as they look.
There was a lot of talk about lithium and rare earths. And actually, those deposits, the information we have about them is from the Soviet era. We don't really know how reliable that is. We don't know how interesting those deposits are.
Investment is another key hurdle to tapping Ukraine's mineral wealth. To start lithium mining alone would cost hundreds of millions of dollars, with any project taking years to actually start producing. Ukraine doesn't currently export any lithium at all. And unlike in South America's lithium triangle, its deposits are buried in rock, far underground. Other critical minerals pose similar challenges, with long and costly work required to start exploiting them or to ramp up production levels and fix infrastructure crippled by war. With Russian forces still grinding onward and already occupying around 1/5 of the country, it's also not clear how much of its own resources Ukraine controls. Even those in Ukrainian hands could be subject to attack, making any investment while the fighting continues a risky bet. Kyiv may be hoping that provides the US with a financial incentive to help end the war.
Let's get more now from Marina, Miron, a military analyst and researcher at the War Studies Department at King's College London. Marina, wonderful to see you, as always. How likely do you think it is that this deal could bring some kind of ceasefire to Ukraine?
Good day, Claire. Well, at least a leaked text or preliminary text of the deal doesn't even mention ceasefire. It is very vague when it comes to security guarantees. It doesn't really say anything about them except for the fact that the US would protect its interests. Therefore, it remains questionable whether this deal is the road to actually establishing ceasefire, because we have to remember that the Trump administration is also talking to Moscow, and Moscow is very much opposed to a ceasefire, or at least a ceasefire where European/NATO troops would be on Ukrainian territory monitoring this ceasefire. And again, we don't know where the actual border will be, where will be the line which needs to be monitored, and it requires a lot of troops. So I think it is a first step to satisfy the Trump administration to get at least something out of Ukraine. But we know that the issue with mineral resources and rare earths is very complicated, as has been previously mentioned. Therefore, I think it's more of a way of saving Ukrainian statehood and legitimizing Zelenskyy, and possibly paving a way for Zelenskyy to sign something with the Russians down the road, because the Ukraine is not going to hold elections in near future.
So as he goes to Washington to meet with President Trump, what exactly do you think Zelenskyy will be pushing for in addition to signing this deal, which, as you've said, does not include any kind of security guarantees from the U.S.?
Well, I think the problem here is that the Zelenskyy government has mentioned rare earths without thinking what kind of potential consequences it would lead to. And it appears to be that rare earths have been also mentioned to the Europeans, to the UK, and not least to China. Therefore, it's interesting to see what else Zelenskyy will be pushing for, knowing that there is this potential conflict with who owns what and who might be trying to mine what kind of materials on the one hand. So that is something that I think will have to be resolved, and the Trump administration understands that. And the second thing Zelenskyy will probably push for, most likely, and it would be the most logical step, is for the U.S. to back European efforts to send troops to Ukraine, because for Zelenskyy there is no other alternative, and he understands that European countries are not going to be capable of monitoring any sort of ceasefire alone without U.S. protection.
And when you look at the current military situation, how things look on the battlefield, how urgent of an issue is this for Zelenskyy to get this ceasefire? Is it a sooner rather than later preference?
Well, I think the time is not on Zelenskyy's side in this particular scenario, specifically if the U.S. pulls all aid and Europe will be left alone to foot the bill, because it's not just about money, it's about converting that money into actual military equipment. So that is the first issue. The second issue that Ukraine has is obviously manpower. And manpower could cause a lot of fissures within the society that's already fragmented due to the war and due to the political turmoil, meaning that Zelenskyy will have to recruit people who are 18 years old and above, meaning that would be a huge shock to the Ukrainian society. So from the Ukrainian perspective, and we're talking about saving Ukrainian statehood, it is important that this war ends as soon as possible. Not so much for the Russians. The Russian side has some more time, and they're actually benefiting, because despite the current counteroffensive by the Ukrainian troops near Toretsk, the Russians are still pushing on, and they can take up more territory until some sort of a ceasefire agreement or peace deal is signed.
Marina, thank you as always for your insights. We've been speaking with Marina Miron, a military analyst and researcher at the War Studies Department at King's College London. Turning now to the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, to speak with Rudik, a member of the Ukrainian parliament and leader of the opposition Holos, or Voice Party. Good to see you again. This is quite a change of rhetoric towards Zelenskyy there, from Donald Trump calling him a dictator just days earlier to now offering some level of praise. What do you make of this turn?
Hello, Claire, and thank you so much for having me. We Ukrainians are very surprised about this change, but we hope that it will be a sign that the relations between President Trump and President Zelenskyy are warming up. We are very much interested in one particular thing, is figuring out how to end the war on Ukrainian terms. And we hope that right now, when President Zelenskyy will give President Trump the ability to come back to the US citizens, to the voters, and say there is a victory for President Trump, we are very happy about that, because we hope that the next step would be, again, towards strengthening Ukraine and our ability to defend against Russia.
So it does seem that Trump sees this minerals deal as a step toward a ceasefire in the war. How optimistic are you about what Zelenskyy will actually be able to get from the Americans today?
So we are thinking that we have heard many statements from President Trump that he thinks that Putin wants peace. However, we have not seen any fact here on the ground that would confirm that. So the situation in battlefield did not drastically change. and we are under the attack every single night in our peaceful cities. So for the last couple of weeks, I don't remember a day or night when we didn't have to spend some time in the bomb shelters because of the drone or missile attacks on our cities. So we don't know certain things, and Donald Trump has some cards in his sleeves. However, we don't know how does he think that Putin wants peace or would be able to agree to something. However, it is very important that the relations between Ukraine and the United States are being strengthened. And it's very important that the work that Donald Trump started on making Europe to be more responsible about the security of European continent, that this work becomes successful.
Mm-hmm. Trump has said about security for Ukraine just earlier this week, he said we're going to have Europe do that. So do you believe that Europe is capable of ensuring security even without the United States there as guarantors of this security?
It will be incredibly hard to do, because what we see right now that these processes of arming the country, any country, starting from the political statements and decisions up to spending more money and then to building more military factories and facilities and actually ending up of being strong can take years. We in Ukraine have won and fought for this time for our European allies over the last 3 years. And we think that the European countries are not ready yet if there would be like any kind of the conflict on their territories to defend themselves properly, especially against huge armies. So we hope that right now this process of arming the continent is being sped up. And we are super grateful for all the steps that are being taken in this matter.
And when Donald Trump speaks with Vladimir Putin, what concessions would you like to see his administration push for from Moscow?
Well, first and foremost, the main question that we are asking for is the security guarantees, right? This is the baseline for all the negotiations. How do we make sure that Russia would not attack us again? We are also a sovereign state, and we do not give up on any of our territories that were captured by Russia, starting from Crimea in 2014 and up to anything that they have captured since 2022. We want to see Ukrainian children that were kidnapped by Russia to come back, and we want all the prisoners of wars exchanged all for all. We want the responsibility for people who committed all kinds of the war crimes on our territories, and I think the world wants that as well. These are the minimum things that we really want to see, but as we say, there would be discussions, so we hope to get some of that done.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on DW News today. We've been speaking with Rudik, a Minister of Parliament, leader of the opposition Holos Party in Ukraine.